welcome to Ekoi Beyond, episode 2, The Women We Turn Into Ghosts. So, should we get started?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I guess I'll go first this time, since Brenda went first last time.
Mm-hmm.
So, have either of you heard about Cihuateteos?
Girl, I can't even pronounce it. So no.
Okay, so how about you, Brenda?
No.
Okay, so it'll be an interesting story. So basically, among the Aztecs, if you died during childbirth, you were considered a badass woman. And it's crazy that how badass you were, that your relatives would actually guard your body for two things, actually. And it was because they believed that once your soul departed, you carried this dangerous magical power. And then also because there were a lot of thieves and they would actually attempt to steal either your middle finger, and don't ask me why the middle finger, I didn't look into that, or a strand of hair, and then they would place it on their shields because they believe that having some sort of your body part on their shield would actually make them more powerful. So it's pretty cool to see how women were treated back then.
Yeah, sounds like they're very veneered, is that the word? They're very looked up to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the interesting part is that you did not become a Cihuateteo until your soul crossed the underworld. And I don't know how they knew when the soul crossed the underworld, but you had to wait for that moment. And after that, you were a Cihuateteo. And actually, just like a little historical background, the word comes from Nahuatl, meaning mujeres que son espíritus, or women that are spirits, or they also meant mujeres diosas, which means just goddesses. And these spirits were not gentle, and they were vampire-like beings, servants of the moon gods. And I'm probably going to butcher this. The moon gods were called Tezcatlipoca and Tlazoteotl. And it was said that the Cihuateteos came out, or they still come out. A lot of people still believe that they come out 5 nights of each year. So they would come out at the one night of called Venado, which is just reindeer. No, not a reindeer. Brenda, help me.
What?
Deer?
Deer.
Reindeer. You're in the Christmas spirit.
Night 2 was lluvia, which is rain. Night 3 was mono, which is monkey. And then it's casa, which is house. And then águila, which is eagle. Yeah.
So does that mean they come back as those beings?
No, that's the nights that they would come out. So, and the Aztec calendar, they had different animals for each night. And then those were the nights that the Cihuateteo had permission to come back to the world.
Okay.
And they were said to appear as coyotes, snakes, and even human-like. But when they came out as humans, they were described as hideous. They actually had chalk white skin and long nails, and some of them even had the heads of their victims wrapped around their waist. And they were said to haunt the crossroads, waiting for children to wander too far. They also brought seizures, diseases, and nightmares. And some actually seduced men, and only to kill them after they were impregnated.
That's interesting. So they just, what do they do with their babies once they're impregnated? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I didn't look into that far.
Mm-hmm.
And people would actually leave offerings to Cihuateteos. So they would do food or even feast just to keep the spirits distracted until dawn. Because they said that if the sun rose and hit their skin, they would destroy them instantly. So kind of like vampires, which to me was interesting. And I did try to see if maybe Cihuateteos inspired the modern day vampire, but it sounds like it's two distinct things. One came from Europe and Cihuateteos obviously are from Mexico. But just to me, it's astonishing how the similarities are, and they were from different continents.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah, so I know all of this sounds cruel, but there were actually some stories that would show that Cihuateteos would serve as guides to those who were lost, protecting those who would show them respect. And they would even reveal hidden altars when offering could honor the women who had died in childbirth.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there is a story that I was actually able to find that took place in Durango, and I can share with you guys. One night in a small village near Durango, a young man named Tlaloc carried an offering for his mother, who had died at childbirth. His grandmother had warned him of the Cihuateteos. However, even though he was scared, he decided to continue his journey to honor the life of the woman who had given so much for her people. As he moved along the path, this mist started to come out, and it basically covered the whole path. At his steps appeared a woman in a white dress, very long hair, eyes with deep and sorrowful. And he asked, ¿Quién eres? So basically he asked, who are you? And she said, I'm a Cihuateteo. And she said, guardiana de quienes dieron vida y partieron antes de tiempo. Tu respeto honra a mis hermanas y a mí. So in English, that means guardian of those who gave life and left the world before their time. And your respect honors my sisters and I. And she led him down a hidden path to an altar of flowers, candles, and offerings. There, Tlaloc placed his gift, and he understood that Cihuateteos were not only spirits of sorrow, but of strength, courage, and eternal love. And actually, from that night on, the villagers lit candles and sang for the Cihuateteos, not just in fear, but also in reverence. So it's a cute little story to show that, yes, they were mean and cruel, and they had their bad sides, but they also had their good sides.
I like that. So they're also guardians.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a very sweet story.
Yeah, and I found it interesting how a lot of the Aztec culture was around kind of honoring death. And a lot of the stories basically ask for offerings to those who have died. So
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting to see that they didn't see death as we see it now.
Yeah.
But it was like honored.
Yeah.
And I know, Brenda, you want to say something?
No, I guess then you still see that in some of the traditions that they, that are carried in Mexico, I think, to bring in offerings and celebrating those that have passed away, or they look at it like it's a transition, something to celebrate instead of something to fear.
Yeah, and a lot of people in Mexico still honor Cihuateteos. I didn't know that. We don't, at least my family doesn't do that, but I was reading that a lot of people, till this day, they still believe in Cihuateteos, and they're still fearful of those nights, of those 5 nights. They believe that they still come and do everything that they did back then. And what I found more interesting was that a lot of scholars say that La Llorona is heavily influenced from the Aztec traditions of the Cihuateteos. Yeah, and La Llorona is our next story, so I'll pass it over to Brenda.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, when you were describing it, the woman with the long black hair and the white dress, that reminds me of the Llorona. So today, that is what I am going to talk about. And La Llorona to us is a childhood ghost that we grew up listening stories about. The Llorona translates to the weeping woman. So if you're from Latin America, most likely you grew up hearing stories about her. And so the stories I think that I've heard are somewhat similar. There are some variations. I know I probably learned about her when I was 5 or 6 years old. Older family members would tell my sister and I scary bedtime stories, partly because, the intent of the story is to, at least the way that I interpret it was, they're trying to scare you enough to make sure that you behave.
Yeah.
And then also don't get up and out of bed and make sure that you stay in bed at night. So the story that I was told is that there was a woman that went mad and drowned her children in the river because they would not behave. And then she immediately regretted her actions, and then she took her own life in drowning herself in the river. Some people describe her ghost now that walks by the rivers and looking for her children, crying, "Ay, mis hijos, ay, mis hijos." So she's crying, "Oh, my children."
How does it go?
I'm not going to repeat it. But they describe her the same way as you described her earlier, with the long black hair, in the white dress. So they say she haunts the streets and looking for her children, and she sees any children who, at night who, shouldn't be out, she will take them and recreate that story over and over again. So that is the warning, you should not be outside of bed late at night So, Kimberly, is this story similar to what you heard growing up about La Llorona? Did you have a similar experience?
Yes and no. I think for me, my family, the part that she does come out yelling, and you can do that part because I'm not gonna be yelling.
Yeah.
That's similar, but for me, I was always told that she got to that point because she was a bad mom. She didn't take care of her kids, and they were basically running around a well, and they fell in the well, and she started becoming depressed, and then she died, and then her spirit came back to life, and she became La Llorona. So that's the story.
Different. Well, so I did a little bit of digging into where did the story originate, and in the first documented account of her appearing is in the 1550s, but it was documented then, but she was actually first cited according to the Florentine Codex, which is a text about the Spanish invasion in Mexico. It indicates that she first appeared in 1509, which is before the arrival of Hernan Cortez in his Spanish troops. And she appeared in Tenochtitlan, which is now Mexico City. There's also here information that I found that it is believed that her story is compared to the Aztec deities, like Cihuateteos. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, which is the goddess of motherhood, and she's also been connected to the Virgin of Guadalupe, which I find that a bit surprising, but according to information that I found, also just like sources from other like podcasts and Wikipedia, they state that there's connections there in the Mexican culture to the Virgen de Guadalupe, because she's a mother again, but a lot of it ties back to that story that she's a mother consumed by rage that drowned her children and then was overcome by her grief. I also found somewhat of a tie back to Germany, but I couldn't find too much detail on that. So it sounds like it might be tied to the Spanish invasion, and then also Aztec mythology might have been some stories that came over from when the conquistadors came in.
So La Llorona is tied to the Virgen de Guadalupe?
Yeah,
that's interesting. I always thought that she came from the Philippines.
So for some reason, she's tied to just different mother figures. So that is, I guess, the connection there to like the Aztec goddess. And there's another one that is also known as Our Lady Mother, or Tonantzin. That is the other way you would say her name. There's others here, but I'm just like, I'm gonna butcher their names, so I can add the information in the podcast descriptions. So it's connected to many cultures all throughout, I would say, Latin America. So Tien, have you heard any stories similar to the Weeping Woman?
No, I have not. I'm sure there are similar ones, and I'm trying to think if like Josh has told me any Filipino stories about that, but I don't really know. Yeah, I'm sure there's versions of her everywhere though.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, yeah, in other cultures, I saw that like in German folk tales and even Hebrew tradition, there's actually some similarities in those figures that describe phantoms kind of similar to the Whipping Woman, which the Llorona.
I'm just thinking about that movie they made
I was just
a couple years back, and that movie sucked.
Oh, I was gonna say we should watch it.
You like
I
that
had never
movie?
seen it.
It was so bad.
I think it's on Prime, right?
I don't know where it is.
Okay.
It might be.
Yeah. So, well, in conclusion, her legend has evolved to different themes of motherhood and loss and cultural identity across generations. And it's used as a cautionary tale or a symbol of grief. And her story remains a powerful part of folklore today. Well, that's all I have for the Weeping Woman, La Llorona. So now let's move on to Tien's topic.
Thank you, Brenda. So today I'm going to be talking about this tale that is a very common legend in some southern Vietnamese provinces. And I think it's kind of similar to La Llorona because it does serve as a cautionary tale against wandering at night, but also, interestingly, a phenomenon rumored in places like some of the Saigon prisons. So this tale is called, in Vietnamese, it is called Ma Vu Dai, which literally translates to the long-breasted ghost.
Big boobies.
Long boobies.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're big.
Big and long. And she is a spirit born from sorrow, injustice, or a mother's love warped by death. So there's a couple different stories about her, but they all say that she drifts above the ground wearing a white robe. Her hair is a curtain, very long, hiding her face, and no living soul wishes to see. And where her name comes from, she appears as a woman with long breasts sagging down the front of her body, and some say it also wraps around in chains, but just think of it touching the ground. Very, very long.
She sounds scary.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and others, they swear they would spot her high in the treetops, watching the lonely or the drunk who wander beneath. So I found two different versions of her. They're similar, but they take place in different locations. So the first version of her tale takes place in prison in Vietnam. And according to the story, but it's not confirmed, the long-breasted ghost is the embodiment of a female prisoner. She was around 30 years old, imprisoned for opposing the old regime. And while in prison, she was brutally tortured, leading her to commit suicide by hanging herself. And because of her unjust death, she transformed into a ghost to torment people. So, like La Llorona, at midnight, people would hear these heart-wrenching cries. And then she would head towards the male prisoner's cell block. She would stand in front of the door, tear open her robe, and this is where the story I thought was interesting because she would then expose her breast and forcefully breastfeed the male prisoners.
Sorry, Jen. In what part did this prisoner get long titties, though? I just want to know. Like, how?
This story, to be honest with you, I tried looking to understand how does that tie into her ghost having long breasts. I don't know, but maybe the next one will be a little better.
Okay.
But in this version of her, she forcefully breastfeeds the male prisoners, and because of the coercion or the suddenness of it, they can't escape. They can't escape it. So when they
stuck there.
Yes, basically she's suffocating them.
Oh
so
God.
when they wake up, they can't struggle, they can't move or anything like that. And so she would continue feeding another person, and she would force feed 10 to 15 prisoners a night.
Oh my God.
And according to the victim's account, after being breastfed, they were dazed for a few days, 1 or 2 days, before regaining their composure and lucidity. And notably, none of them could describe the taste or the smell of her long breasts.
Ew.
Kim is having a blast with this story.
I'm picturing everything, and I'm like, oh my God.
I know. Can you imagine a ghost forcefully breastfeeding? But the other story, the other version of it, I think makes a little bit more sense where it comes from, where they say the long-breasted ghost, she was once a woman who died a tragic and unjust death. So her breasts were also unnaturally long, and she would also, like the prison story, let out an eerie, high-pitched laughter or cry in the dead of the night. And according to this version of her, she is a type of ghost that forms from the souls of women who died while their child was still young. So she has these really strong maternal instincts, hence the breastfeeding. So she would target men, very drunk men late at night, or who are going home alone, or children in the night. And just like the other story, when she catches the victim, she would also forcefully breastfeed them. But this one's a little different because when the victim wakes up, the next morning, their mouth is full of dirt. So she's like a malevolent kind of ghost. So I was trying to figure out, well, what is the purpose of her story? Susie. And
Sucia.
what?
I was like, Sucia. Dirty. That's all.
Oh, yeah. So some people say that she could be like the Vietnamese version of like a succubus or siren, and then maybe a cautionary tale to not be so drunk, not walk home at night, and also to scare little children, like to stay indoors at night. Otherwise, the long-breasted ghost will suffocate you.
Oh my God.
But yeah, whether she is the restless soul of a wronged woman, a grieving mother torn from her child, she's still a cautionary ghost tale meant to keep travelers safe. And her legend endures, rooted in the fears of the night. So I thought her story, it was kind of similar to La Llorona in many ways. And it was also like, I've never heard of this before. And of all the ghosts out there, I never thought a long-breasted ghost would exist.
I feel like you can just go to Walmart nowadays late at night
Girl.
and find your long-breasted ghost there.
Oh my God.
So how did you come across this? Or you had heard of this growing up? Or
No, I had not. I was just looking up like scary folklores, like for women, like, because that's our theme.
Okay.
And this is one of the ones that came up. So I thought it would be a fun one to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now I need to know why her breast coil around her body. Like, is it a shield? Like, is that how she protects herself?
I don't know.
My long breath. You can't hurt me.
I don't know. Maybe it adds to the scary and like unnatural effect. I have no idea. That's just how she's described.
Wow. Oh my God. That was an interesting story to end the podcast with. Now I have a beautiful picture in my mind of a woman with a long boob.
You're welcome.
All right. So the women we turn into ghosts are not lost. They remain in the stories we tell, in the quiet corners of memories, and in the echoes of our own voice.
Each tale is a lantern in the dark, reminding us that even shadows carry light.
So as you leave this episode, carry these stories with you, share them, whisper them, let them live beyond this moment.
Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Yay!
I took your line.